Hello everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the University of Life Learn How to Code series. Today we're going to be talking about Python, and for our very first lesson we'll be tackling lists in Python. One of the most important data structures you'll ever learn, and today we're going to see what it's all about and how to use it. So, as you can see here, I have the IPython interpreter up and running on a Linux terminal, and you can probably install something similar on whatever OS you have. You might be using Windows or Mac, and for Windows you can download, and for Mac it's built in on your OS, so you don't need to install anything. First of all, what is a list? A list is a Python collection data structure. What does that mean? It allows us to collect objects in one variable. A list is ordered. It's also changeable and mutable. And furthermore, it allows duplicate members to exist in this collection. So, first of all, let's start off by creating a list. We shall call our first list list1 and give it the elements of strings, which are apple, ball, and complex. Right? And we can just simply type out list1 and it'll give us back list1. We can also use the print command in Python and it'll give us out the same answer. Let's create a second list and call it list2. And this time we're giving it different elements. In this case, the first element is an apple, second element is 21, an integer, and the third element is 3.14, which is a floating number. Again, we can print out, using one of two different ways, the contents of the list. So we can create a list of a single element, if you notice. And if we type it out, we will get that single element back. An empty list is simply represented by the square brackets without anything inside. Alright. Very nice. We know how to create a list. And one of the most important characteristics of a list is the length of the list. So if you notice here, we printed out the length of list 1, and as expected, it's 3. And with list 2, it's also 3. Do the same for the other lists. List 3, we expect it to be 1, and the empty list has length 0. Now, we have lists. What can we do with them? So, okay, one of the most important things that you can do with the list is to basically access the elements of the lists. And we do this by giving the position of the element within the list. Now, an important thing to note is that Python, like most modern programming languages, the indexing of a Python list is zero-based, meaning that the first element in the list is at position 0. So let's go ahead and try to access the first element of list 1. Oh, so I made a mistake here. I tried to access position 1 in list. And list is not any of the lists that I defined. So you'll notice that you have list 1, list 2, and list 3. List is actually what's known as a reserved word in Python. It allows you to create a list. So accessing position 0 in a list will give you back this error, and it'll tell you that list is not subscriptable, and that's the technical term for what we're trying to do. So let's fix that and access list 1 instead correctly, and that'll give us apple at position 0. Now, if we want to access the rest, position 1 will be ball and position 2 will be complex. And you'll notice that in position 3, incorrect, 3. Okay, I accidentally used list 2, but same thing because they both have 3 elements. And it will tell me that the index is out of range because we start counting at 0. Likewise, what we have here is we are using, so going back to why list is, you cannot use list as a variable name, is because it is a special word which allows you to create basically an empty list. So there we go. Now, the next thing that you might want to do with a list, instead of accessing elements singly by giving its position, is to actually go through the list. And since the list is in an ordered data collection, an ordered data structure, it would be helpful to have something that goes through the list that returns it in order. So the next topic is how to access parts of a list. So we learned how to access single elements of a list. What if we wanted to access a bigger part of the list, right? And not just the whole list, but a sublist, so to speak. So this is a technique using what is known as slicing. So we basically want to slice the list. So in this case, we get the list starting off from index 1 all the way up to index 2. And as you notice, such a slice, and we denote the slice by giving the first index a colon and the second index. The left side of the index 1 is inclusive, which means that you will include the element that is at the first position, which is ball. It is not inclusive of the right side, or as it's known, it's exclusive, and we don't include complex. So we only return a list of a single element, ball. Notice that we can give on the right side the last element, and now, rather, we can give the index 3, which in slicing means all the way up to the end of the list. So this will not give you an error when you use it as part of the slice. And you'll notice that it will give you both the elements ball and complex. So it's a good thing I do this because it's easy to make a mistake. So like this. So this means this is a good point to make, where try to name your list something else other than list and a number. The reason we're just doing it for this is for instructional purposes, but it's very easy to make this mistake. So let's try it starting from index point 0 and colon and no right side index. And as you can see, this gives you the whole list. So it starts off at the element at index 0 all the way up to the end of the list. And hopefully this is clear what happened in this one. We start off at the element at position 2, and we want the rest of the list. And since we are already at the end of the list, we just get a list of a single element. Now, this is an interesting thing in Python. So far we've used indices 0, 1, 2, and so on, which are basically the numbers 0 and positive integers. So what happens if we use a negative integer, in this case negative 1? So for Python, this is a valid index, and it basically gives us the first element from the end of the list. So let's give something like -3, and at -3 we get the first element, and -4 it's out of range because there are only 3 elements in the list. And finally, if we just give the colon, it's basically asking for the whole list end to end, and it gives us the whole list of apple, ball, and complex. Okay, so here are the 3 lists that we've defined, and now let's do something like this. So we have create a list 4, and we say we want list 1 plus list 2. And in this case, Python does what you pretty much expect it to, the intuitive thing. And now if we look at list 4, it gives us list 1 appended with list 2 and assign it to the name list 4. Very nice. And so this is just another way to do an add. Oops. Okay, better. Okay, so mistake on my part. I should have checked the extend documentation. What happened here? Okay, let's do it the right way. So take a look at list 4, and now what happens? That's list 1, and list 2 is list 4, and then extend appends list 3. So the extend operation basically appends to list 4, and it doesn't return anything. So when we look at list 5, there's nothing there. Okay, now we've looked at how to create a list, how to access the elements of a list, and how to access portions of the list. We also looked at how to add lists together, extend a list. What if we wanted to go through the elements of the list and we want to go through them in order? The built-in operation in Python is basically known as the for loop, which allows us to iterate over a list or go through the elements in order. And this is how it looks. So let's first check the length of a list 4, which is 7. So what we have here is the command range, and we give it length of list 4 is basically 7, and range 0 to 7 returns. That's unusual, right? So we say we want range of 0 to 7. It gives us this function-like thing. So how do we make use of this function called range? So now we use it in the for loop. And give the for loop the index I, and we say for I in a range. Oops. Yeah, forgot a space in there. Let's do that again. Go up and edit that space. And it will print I and list for at I. Okay, so the range for I in range gives us a way to print out 0, 1 to 6, and appended to that is we index list 4 at position I. So at position 0 it's apple, 1 it's ball, and so forth. Right. So if you come from other programming languages, this might look a little familiar, especially in C, C++. And this is one way you can iterate through a list, but it's not the only way in Python, nor is it even the desired way. So let's look at a different way we can go through a list. So again, we need to use the for loop, but in this case, we change in the holder, the variable holder, in this case call it item. And instead of using the range, we use the list directly. So we say for item and list 4, and we just simply want to print, oops, this is incorrect. Right, so, okay, no, I just went ahead and did that, but you can see the 6 is basically left over from the previous loop. Let's correct this. That was a mistake. So before I move on to the next part, you can simply just try it for yourself and just remove the I and just print the item. As you notice, it'll print the list in order. Right. So that does it for our first lesson on how to code. Learn how to code, and our first lesson on Python lists. And hopefully you guys got something from this, and for our next lesson we will be tackling more advanced topics in Python, and we'll do more advanced stuff using the lists. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe down below, and if you have any other topics in programming that you might want me to tackle, please leave in the comments below. Thanks, and have a good day.